All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. So excited for today's episode. I have a very special guest that I recently got a chance to connect with. And as you guys are learning more about her, I'm gonna be learning more too, So without getting too deep into it, first and foremost, I like to thank you guys for all the support, all the encouragement, and everything that you guys have done to help me be where I am today with this platform and others. Truly could not do it without you guys, sharing, liking on social media, without you guys encouraging me, to keep going and following my purpose and my calling, and without you guys being guests, because without you guys showing up, I'll be talking to myself, and granted, I can talk, but it'll probably get a little bit boring after a while, So I truly appreciate it, and I'm truly humbled because of you guys. So thank you for that. I believe this is episode 29 of season 2. So we're just trucking it around, and keeping it going. If you so happen to stumble across this episode and you do not know who I am, which it happens. It's okay. My name is Michael D. Davis Thomas, aka MDDT Speaks. I spent a little bit over 11 years in the Michigan child welfare system. Half of that being on the juvenile side, the other half being on the foster care side. I started advocating at age 15. Once aged out, I started working in juvenile corrections and then congregate care work in a couple of different facilities, sitting on a couple of different boards, doing a little bit of social work and case management, programming, policy work, and you name it. I've been around the block when it comes to child welfare. And I'm very passionate about it. I have 10 years plus doing this work and advocating about it. So that's why I'm here, to kind of give back, pay it forward, and to help aid and abet that transformative change that I believe is going to happen and that needs to happen. Without further ado, I'm going to have my guest introduce herself.
Well, I want to first start by thanking you, Michael, for even giving me the opportunity to come on your podcast today. My name is Frankita Jenkins. I'm a lived experience consultant. I like to think of myself as something as a solutionist. I spent about 8 or 9 years in care in the Florida system before I emancipated, and I spent like literally the last 10 years since I aged out working in different various aspects of the child welfare system, policy, direct care, program implementation, research assistance, things of that nature. We can go on and on, but I'm passionate about transforming the child welfare system. I am a product of intergenerational foster careness. So my mom was in foster care. Some of my nieces have looked to the foster care system, but I have gotten them out of the system. So it's literally my passion just to make sure that, when I do have a daughter, she wouldn't be faced with those same disparities that our ancestors have been faced with for generations.
Wow. But very powerful. Like, you ain't give us too much, but even in that small section there, sharing and telling us about yourself, I have a whole bunch of questions already, but before I get into some of those questions, I like to start with my first one. If you could share to whatever depth or comfortability, when did your story begin? And help us by building a timeline to your now.
So initially, I thought my story with the foster care system began when I was 9 or 10 years old in the 5th grade, and I was removed. That was like the last remove from my mom. So I've been in the system since then. But once I aged out and read my blue book, I really learned that I entered the foster care system as a infant. I was found in the hotel room, so I had a stint then. But from my recollection, what I can remember, it began at 9 years of age, and I was removed from school, so a social worker showed up at my school. My mom was incarcerated at the time, so I knew we had like child welfare involvement, but I was actually under the custody of my 18-year-old sister. So she was kind of doing the best she can to raise me, but it was hard. So from 10, I literally was removed from every bit of normalcy I had. and put into the foster care system at 10 years old. And that was hard. I went through a lot of different transitions. I stayed in my first home for about a year or two, but it was kind of eating up at me because the first home I was placed in was about a mile from my grandmother's house. And all my siblings lived with my grandmother. Well, three of us was in foster care and the four older siblings lived with my grandmother. So I was literally like right around the corner from my family, but I couldn't see them. I couldn't visit them. From there, I was in different, excuse me, I was in different homes, different placements. Um, I ran away a few times. I was a victim of childhood sex trafficking, which I have worked in that realm to provide support. I had a baby at 15. I mean, it's so much I can go into that transpired, but literally from my time, the 8 years I spent in foster care, I experienced literally every good and bad thing it has to offer, from being in 20, 30 plus placements to being a runaway for a year plus to being in DJJ facilities, not because I had a juvenile charge, but because that was the only placement they could find for me at that time. I'm sorry, I'm a little stiffly right now,
No, you're
but
good.
building that timeline, the change for me, like I was on runaway and I passed out one day. I was with my boyfriend. I was 15 at the time. I woke up at the hospital and the nurse told me I was 8 weeks pregnant. So I was like, 8 weeks pregnant? That was like the catalyst for me. Once I found out I was pregnant with my son, I immediately returned home to returning back into the care of the child welfare system. I'm sorry, I'm a little shaken up, y'all. I'm gonna be getting this transparent all the time, but I was on runaway for like a year or so at that time. I found out I was pregnant with my son, and I was like, my case manager told me, if you don't come back when you have your son, we're going to take him and he's going to be put up for adoption. And that was literally, I guess, the catalyst I need for me to really lose that hopelessness I had, because we all battle hopelessness when you have child welfare involvement. Like it's a very hopeless situation. And through my son, I found that hope. So when my son came along, that was the transformation. I joined therapy not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I took parenting classes not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because I knew at 15, about to be 16, I didn't know how to be a mother to this child. So I took the time to go through the therapy, take the parenting classes, and it kind of put me on the path to here. But even when I was in care, I could say maybe 11 or 12, I told all my foster siblings, like, when I grow up, I'm gonna help kids like us. Cause this don't make no sense. Even as a child, I had to come in sense of this is not right. I know this can't be right. You're telling me this right. This can't be right. So that became my drive. Like I didn't know, but my advocacy started at 11 or 12 when I was telling my foster mother how everyone in the house felt, and we deserve this and we deserve that. And from there, it transitioned to being in emergency shelter payment placements that are specifically built for less than 30 days, being in there for months at a time, actually establishing like a youth advisory board. I didn't know what I was doing at that time, but bringing us together and allowing everyone, creating a space for everyone to share their perspective and seeing how we can meet the workers like on common ground so we all win. So I've always had it in me to, like, I'm not the girl who would pick an argument, but I would lead a revolt. Like, you mean to telling me if nobody won't stand up, I'm gonna stand up. I don't care what I gotta go through. I'm gonna stand up, you know? And from there, I aged out. I became my first job. I became a AmeriCorps Vista. So I don't know if you're familiar with AmeriCorps or if the listeners are. It's like the domestic peace corps. So you volunteer for a year and you work in nonprofit organizations. They have different positions, but the position I chose was the community engagement and resource coordinator. So at 19, I'm given this position. I mean, I could handle it. I knew I was made for it, but I was kind of intimidated. And I went through this little awakening because I was working at what they call the Macklemore Children's Center in Miami, which is like an emergency shelter for newborns. Like if a newborn come 0 to 7, that's where they're placed. Come to find out, as I'm working there and I have access to certain things, I found out that I used to be in that placement. When I went into care as an infant, that was the exact shelter I was at. And now, all these years later, I'm here working at this shelter. So it kind of gave me like, Lord, if you don't show out, like you telling me I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And from there, I in partnership, I built a tech success program. I worked in the philanthropy department. I did so much. Like I used to do so much for organizations that to the point I didn't realize I was doing a bit too much. And as I learned my value, I realized that, hold up, like you said, just because I have this expertise and this experience doesn't mean you get to exploit me any further. Pay me what I'm worth. Because I realized like I was working with at during my time. Okay, we're going to transition from AmeriCorps. I did AmeriCorps for a year or two, and then I was hired at that organization to be a part of the implementation team for a evidence-based model. I'm not going to say any names that was being implemented in the urban area. However, the model was coming from a very undiverse area, so they didn't have the barriers that we have in Miami, like all these different languages, all these different cultures. I'm so sorry, I'm so stuffy. All these different cultures that all these populations seeking to work together. And I immediately, a part of the implementation team, I'm like, well, so what other languages are we going to offer this in? How are we going to recruit foster parents who could serve for those languages? Like I immediately just started coming up with strategies and solutions because where other people see problems, I see solutions. And I was like, okay, if this is what I'm gonna be doing, I have to figure out a way to position myself to make enough money to be very okay, comfortable. Like I'm not trying to get rich, but y'all gotta pay me what I'm worth and still build upon my passion of working, in different organizations. And literally from there, every job I have had has been someone tapping me like, we got this position opening up here. I think you'll be good at it. I was tapped when I was working at children. I was working at CHS. I was tapped about a residential program in Atlanta that they was revamping for survivors of sex trafficking and youth who were currently being rescued from the sex trafficking realm. Being that a lot of people in Miami do my expertise, that I have worked directly with survivors, like developed my own system. All this before I knew what I actually was doing. I was already doing it hands-on, one-on-one. So she told me that the director thought that I could be of asset to them to help them develop new procedures and techniques because we know in certain ways you have to approach these clients. You can't approach a youth who has been through so much trauma telling them you need to do this, and that. No, we can't. It's just certain ways you have to approach it. And I've learned that I was masterful at using my empathy to connect with them. So every position I've been in has always been, okay, you did this, so now this, you did this, so now that. And that kind of lead me to becoming a consultant because I enjoy solving the problems. So in a small frame, that's kind of how I got where I'm at today.
Wow. Just going back and processing, all that you just told me. You've been through it and then some, you know.
Right.
And it's good to see that, throughout it all, you stayed constant and persistent and, found your way. Because a lot of us going through what we've been through, and I've said it a couple times, um, no one will be mad at us for, no, I'm not really for this life thing. I'm over it, or, falling prey to, the many other, side effects, I say, of life or child welfare. But it's really awesome to hear, your story and to hear, you took everything in stride, and I'm pretty sure that's summarizing it, that's minimizing it,
To the
um
maximum extent. And I want to take this moment just to amplify that I'm not perfect. And I didn't get here through making great choices. I've made every mistake you can think of. That's how I
Mhm.
started my clients. Baby, it's not a mistake you made that I ain't made before. I could never judge you. I've never been the perfect woman. Evolved woman, yes, that is me, but I was never perfect. And that's why I kind of gave you that title I gave you for the episode, or the quote I gave you for the episode, because that's something I believe in. Every person I approach them with, I don't care what you used to be, what you used to do, what you used to have going on. Who do you want to be today? Because you can wake up today and inspire that story and say, well, I'm going to be somebody else. And that's your choice, you know?
Definitely. I want to touch on a couple of things that you mentioned, kind of going back and working my way forward. One thing that you talked about is getting to a place where you discovered more about yourself and your story, you know, but also going off of the basis of what you could recollect, you know, I don't, and correct me if I'm wrong, you had a guardianship with your older sister.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's, you know, so and that resonated with me because that's kind of similar to what I had. Coming out of the juvenile side of things, my mom had 5 consecutive strokes, so she could be I believe she has still some type of guardianship, but through my sister being court appointed over her, my sister had guardianship, and then my sister went through the right process to have guardianship over me. Um, Throughout this time, I was in and out of juvenile and out of the system, even though the rights and all that other stuff was still trying to be figured out. But I spent time in my sister's care. Now, mind you, my mom had 5 consecutive strokes when I was 11. That was the first time I entered into juvenile. But my sister had went off to college. My sister came back to take care of my mom at 18, I believe. Um, and by 21, that's when she had a guardianship over me, and we were staying together. We were actually homeless, and while we were homeless, we got along very well, which is crazy. Like, struggle, we got along, but when we finally got an apartment and things had started to settle down, it's when um the true test happened. And ultimately my mom, it's kind of that intergenerational, that transgenerational cycle of argumentative behavior, anger problems, and all these different things that we don't see how they pass down, by not providing a nurturing environment. Granted, there's no rule book or guide to parenting, but there's certain things that you learn from your parents that if you become a parent, these are the basis at least, and I can figure everything else out. Going through a dysfunctional household, having absent fathers and a mother that was going through some mental things, my sister didn't pick up on that. So my sister picked up on what she did was the abuse factor. So when my sister got angry at me in those stages of being a teen, simply not taking the trash out on time, those arguments, which you would think would be like a 5 or a 2 in any normal household, they went to a 10. My sister, want to put her hands on me and different things like that. And that led to me going into the foster care system because I told him I didn't want to go back home at the guardianship review hearing. But I resonated with you because there's a lot of times where, people are placed with an older sibling, but there's not a lot of tools to ensure that older sibling, that kinship placement, has everything that they need, to be successful in a non-policing way. And I want to highlight a non-policing way because there's a way to go about, hey, we want you to be the placement for such and such, but we want to make sure when we place them with you, you are prepared and you're trauma informed, because even though you've probably lived with such and such, or you've probably knew of such and such, been an auntie, uncle, sister, or brother, this person was removed and endured some type of trauma. So now you can't just parent them or guardian them as you would think you would do with anybody else, like cousin Pookie or whoever, and I don't see the system doing that, which situations like my own and others out there happen because there's no tools being passed on to these individuals who take that mantle on. Granted, there's some other situations where it just, failure happens, but I do believe if we did more on the preventative measure, we can have more successful kinship placements or
Yeah.
guardianships. So that's one thing I did want to point out that you spoke about. And then also, you mentioned having been sex trafficked, having been a young parent, you know, um, these are like very significant things that are prevalent in the community of our foster brothers and sisters. I wanted to take a moment to touch on these to more in depth. Um, but before I do that, I want to backtrack because throughout your experience, you talked to us from where it started for you, and to where you are now. What has differed between self-care and mental health throughout this time? How has that adapted, changed, molded, and was there a time where you were actually going to therapy, or did were you a person that unfortunately due to the system, you was kind of standoffish to, mental health. So what did that look like for yourself?
I mean, I've been through every aspect of the spectrum. Initially, my first contact with therapy was family therapy with my mom. You mentioned that your mom did have mental issues. My mom is a diagnosed bipolar schizophrenic, so I have first experience of dealing with a mother who's on her own healing journey. Aside from that, my mom had a lot of significant trauma that was passed down. So I knew very early on that mental health had to be a focus for me. Now, I'm not going to say I didn't struggle with it, being very transparent. I was sexually abused as a child, and that led me to a lot of negative behaviors. I used to set fires. I've locked my cousin at the age of 7. I locked my cousins in the closet and set the closet on fire. I set my kitchen on fire, and I was placed into crisis at like 7 or 8. So it was a lot of things going on already, but it was not because I was crazy or I was bad. I was hurting. I was crying out for help. I didn't understand how to process this anger and grief that I had in me. And initially, at a young age, I didn't want to do therapy. 7, 8, no, I don't even want to talk about it. And going through my own trauma, trying to digest trauma I experienced, like experiencing the trauma and trying to process that with my family. And sometimes our families don't have the tools to handle situations correctly, to say in so many words. And from there that re-traumatized me. So I'm like, okay, you want to act like that? I'm gonna show you. Then I'm not playing. Like, I didn't take it very healthily, to say the least. But from there, very standoffish, was in crisis for maybe 2 or 3 months at 7 or 8. And then at 10, coming to foster care, definitely didn't want to do therapy, didn't want to talk to nobody. For me, having my son was a change because, like you said, patterns are passed down between families. If my mom taught me the foundation of parenting, and my dad and my everybody in my extended family, and it wasn't healthy, I can't I can't look at this foundation as a example for what I want to be as a mother. So if I knew this wasn't right, like I was a very smart child. I had a very IQ. I think at 9, I was testing. It's like my IQ was 125 or something. So I was always an intellectual. I just was dealing with the aspects of life. So what was to me like common sense, like, you mean to tell me you're not gonna do this for me, even though I haven't been through what I've been through? And with my son, it was a shift. Like I knew, if you don't want to be the mother and the cousin and the auntie and everything else that you've seen in your family for generations, it's going to take you getting serious with your mental health, addressing this hopelessness. I used to cut myself at one point in my life. I had suicidal ideology. I had suicidal thoughts at one point. So I've dealt with a lot of things on the mental health spectrum. And I don't want to like give all the credit to like, oh, you have to have a baby to find positive mental health. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that was it for me. That became my defining factor that I have a child out here. Mm-mm. Ain't no way I'm gonna put him through what I went through. So I went to therapy for that. I went to therapy for being a young mom. I went to therapy when I was transitioning out of foster care. Now, my last stint with therapy before now, when I probably gotten back into therapy recently over the last 3 months, was when I was like 18 to 21, transitioning out of care. After 21, I was like, I done did therapy since I was 15. I'm good. So I thought mental health was a one-time thing at one point in my life. So I was like, yeah, I did therapy. I don't need no more. But as I got older, I realized that as you transition to different seasons in your life, you have different problems. So no, I may not be having severe anger problems anymore. I'm not angry as I used to be because I don't feel the need to be angry. I feel like I have a whole resource bag of tools to help me process any uncomfortable feelings I'm feeling. However, I do struggle with my anxiety now. When I was younger, when I was in care, I had that I don't give a attitude about everything. So anxiety wasn't very prevalent, or I just had so much anger I didn't realize that my anxiety was triggering it, or I wasn't educated enough to know what it felt like then. But now I know that I struggle with severe social anxiety. Like how I'm talking to you, like it's crazy. The only time that social anxiety isn't an aspect is when I'm doing the work.
Mhm.
If I'm not doing the work, it's not easy for me to go out and connect with others. If I feel like they don't understand my passion or my purpose, I'm not always able to talk to them. So anxiety for me is something big I'm struggling with. So I've been in every spectrum of the mental health spectrum, like doing the therapy, not doing it, like having severe high needs of care. Like, so it depends on like I know my need for mental health will never leave, but the magnitude of support I need will vary depending on what I'm going through in that season in my life.
Definitely. I appreciate you being vulnerable and open about sharing that, because it's important. We were speaking, before I press record, about how being in this work and being in this arena in this field, it takes people who've been through it to say things are okay for the younger generation to believe it.
Right.
Unfortunately, we've gotten to a place where it's not enough that your social worker says it. It's not enough that your judge says it. It's not enough that your foster parent or your adoptive parent, says it. You still struggle, and then still you get those select few that like, I'd rather go through it myself, than have it, But for the most part, if another person who's lived through it comes up to these individuals and like, hey, it's okay to, deal with your mental health.
Right.
It's okay to talk about these things. It helps them, and it helps break down the stigmas culturally and society wise that are out there, and I say culturally because the black community is not the only culture that shoves things under the rug, and doesn't talk about these things, or what we like to do is say go pray about it, and I'm a person like, faith without works is dead. Go pray about it, but also pray that you find the right counselor while you're pursuing finding the right counselor,
Right. Right.
um so, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I want to transition because I like to ask intentional questions that may be helpful to the individuals listening. And You talked about being a young mom, and I know that, for lack of better words, I'm going to use it's a trend in the foster care community. I can't even count on my hand how many young ladies I've done peer support with within this year who've become pregnant and are young parents right now, and are still in a state of trying to recover, bouncing back from stages of change, you know, and you know, and this is where I'll talk about like success and, you know, all these different things aren't linear, because sometimes you're gonna bounce back and forth before you get to that right spot, you know, and wanted, you know, to talk about that experience for yourself, you know, because you said it was a very pivotal moment for you, and making, you know, the right steps for your future, but also for your sons, you know. So if you could, you know, walk me through that a little bit more, and offer anything to some of those young ladies out there, you know.
I would start by saying that teenage pregnancy is an epidemic within the foster care system,
That's
mainly
the word
because
I was looking for. Yep.
yeah,
That's it
yeah,
right there.
yeah, it's an epidemic for sure. And I used to be so ashamed that I was a teenage mother. I used to be so ashamed that God gifted me my son at such an early age. And I can't say per se why it happens, but I know it has a lot to deal with the hopelessness that we as young ladies feel in the system, and that sense of not having no one. Well, I can create something that will always be there for me. And I'm not going to say that was my desire, because I was always the person who said I wouldn't have kids because I didn't see that in my future. But you never know what you need, and everything happened for a reason. I'm not telling you to indulge in teenage pregnancy. I'm telling you to protect yourself, because being a teenage mother is not the worst thing that can come from those type of behaviors. You know, there's STDs that you can never get rid of for your life. I would tell you to find something else that you love, and don't. I would tell any young lady listening that may be pregnant that it's not the end of the world. You're in a position now where you can find a resource to help you become whoever you want to be as a mother, as a woman, as anything you want to be in your life. But those who are not pregnant, I would tell them protect yourself and realize that a baby is not going to solve your problems, because you're still going to feel everything you was feeling before you had that baby, but in a higher magnitude. I believe that peer support and lived experience integration is an answer to so many of the problems we experience within the system. That's why I started my organization, The Guided Heart Corp, because I believe in connecting individuals who are experiencing these experiences to people who have successfully navigated those is the answer to a lot of the problems we see. So connecting a young lady before she's pregnant at the age of 13 or whatever age you think that comes into part. Give them some support. Give them somebody who had a baby, who ain't have a baby, to tell them, like, you don't want to have a baby. I tell all my clients, you don't want to have a baby. You don't need a baby. It's so much hard to do what you want to do with a baby. And be realistic about what comes with it, because it's not glamorous. It's been plenty of nights that I have literally cried myself to sleep because I did not know what to do. Or I was just so overwhelmed, or I was just so like, taken aback. But that all comes with the territory. Educate yourself. It's great programs. I was a part of a program called the Young Parents Project, and it's based out of Florida State University. It's an evidence-based model that's used to reduce um numerous of pregnancies within adolescent age. So if you have a baby, they will prevent you, well, they give you tools to prevent yourself from being in that position again. And they also do workshops with regular teenage youth to prevent pregnancy. So the people who are working with these youth, if you're a provider and you're working with girls as young as 12, I'll say, because if you don't understand, like, we're exposed to things that we would have never thought of. Like at 10 and fifth grade, I didn't know anything about sex, but I was put into a group home with so many teenagers who were already sexually active. Like, I got my first period in a foster home. Like, I didn't know anything about that. So it's so many experiences girls go through coming of age into a woman, and we're not supported. And when I go into, like, from even that, I'll even go into touching on sex trafficking, because teenage pregnancy sometimes comes from a need of emotional needs, and sometimes it comes of about a physical need seeking to be met. They wonder why girls are overexposed, because they have needs that are not being met. I don't care what you say, $100 is not enough for a teenage girl to survive with for a month. I can't get my hair did. I can't get my nails did. But everyone around me in my peer group, parents get their hair did, get their nails did. They make sure they have what they need. So now I'm either one, talked about because I don't have the resources to provide for myself, or I'm two, gonna sacrifice my well-being to figure out a way to get those resources. And all that can be mitigated by actually giving the kids the support they need. Be realistic. The way I look at my approach with child welfare, like, it's no way that if you take me from my parent, I'm a child of the people now, Michael, right? I'm a child of the people. You say I'm gonna
Mhm.
give you a better life than your parents can give you. Any benefit that the state, the people, the federal government have to offer, I should be entitled to it first. If I got something, I'm gonna give it to my child before I give it to anybody else. So I couldn't understand why Asian out of foster care, why I gotta go beg for Section 8? I never received it. I'm just saying, like,
I'm trying to tell you.
I'm not in that state of mind now. But but for real, Michael, like, if you have a program that give out free bus cards, that should be automatically. I shouldn't have to go get another line, another waiting list. And that's where I come into, like, cross system collaboration. If you gonna say we gonna do this and we gonna help these kids, let's really do that. Like, all this can be mitigated if you put the resources and the collaboration in place to help them. Why are kids aging out of foster care and becoming homeless when you have a Section 8 and subsidized housing programs in this country? Now, I'm not the brightest person in the world, Michael, but it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, realistically, I see solutions, and the solution to me is to increase the collaboration, give them the resources. So you mean to tell me I got to go do a whole 160-page resource report to tell you why you guys need to collaborate and work together? You know? So it's just like, I think us with lived experience, we have the solutions, but you're not going to give me this tokenism to say, okay, you can say what I want you to say, or you can speak on what I want you to speak on when I'm comfortable with you speaking on it. But really honoring, like, everything we have to offer. I'm sorry.
I and people, you guys are gonna have to forgive me. Hopefully I don't make nobody mad with this, but I think about like not early slavery, but when abolitionists start to come about, people who
Right.
wanted to help and stuff like that. I feel like, and not similar to slavery, so don't forgive me, but I feel like in a similar sense, there's the people who respect people with lived experience and want to give them equitable opportunities, you know, and believe in giving them equitable opportunities for their experience, and then there's the individuals that don't completely are not for it. They feel like when we bring people with lived experience, they're trying to take our jobs. They're trying to be the new social workers. They're trying to be the new therapists or what have you. Granted, me coming in as a peer support in my state, I remember when I first started to do this, and I got so many cross-eyed looks and so many nasty things said to me, under people's breath, and they thought I didn't hear it because they felt that I was trying to take their job. But I was being the cross, and somebody said it very, very, very nicely. I was being the cross bridge between them all, because if you have a youth that doesn't care to communicate openly with their worker, or doesn't care to even pursue any kind of mental health or therapy, who else is going to be able to open that door for you to be able to get what you need from that youth, or for that youth to start, the steps towards recovering from their trauma? There's no other person than a person with lived experience that's able to
Who
open
can
that
do that?
door,
Right.
and to be that bridge to those resources, and it's not about taking no one's job. It's not about trying to, remove individuals who've spent years in pursuing their education, because I commend social workers. I commend therapists who have no lived experience, to take the sacrifice to be in this field, because first of all, y'all not getting paid enough either, you know.
Right.
But this is a very selfless field because the secondary trauma is real,
Mm.
regardless of where you're at.
Vicarious from.
you
Mm.
know um But we have to get to a place where we have to stop being on the defensive and being on the offensive and trying to help these kids across the board, and you said it very well. It's about being collaborative, collaborating together, being one voice, and unifying to be able to fight against this epidemic, this crisis. Our system was not made to be able to assist these many youth. It's not. Nonetheless, our system wasn't built to do what it's doing. We're operating on a system that was built to police, to increase discrimination, to continue the disparities and the gaps between the Black and brown communities. The only thing that's different is we put a couple policies in front of some of this stuff to make it look a little bit more prettier, and we start offering EBT and cash assistance. And barely doing that, and there's probably some other stuff. So don't nobody get mad at me if y'all work at these places and some other stuff y'all offer on the side. But that's for me. That's what it looked like.
Now, Michael, before you go on, I want to share my sentiments because you made a big point, and I don't think you know how big it was. For one, let me say this. I don't care about nobody feeling like they're going to lose their jobs. Get out the business of doing foster care because it was not created to be a business. People are doing these RFPs and doing all this because they want to help. No, stop looking at us as opportunities to make money. This is our lives. This affects our life, our kids' life, our grandkids' life. Stop making it so personal because it's not personal. And stop underpaying people with lived experience because their job is huge. That vicarious trauma is real. It takes a lot to come work in a system that beats you down every day for years and say, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do this. And what you mentioned about slavery, it is connected to slavery. I read a report. Matter of fact, did you read the report they just put out? If I wasn't poor, I wouldn't be unfit. Did you see that report? I read that report, and it referenced weeping time. And I started doing more research on weeping time of how when a mother was auctioned off and her child was removed, she wept. And I thought in my heart, every day, every 3 minutes in America, a mother is weeping when their child is snatched from their arms. Why is that okay? In this great country we call America, it should not be okay. It should not be unacceptable. And it's so hush hush about it. Like, I'm tired, not in the sense of I'm physically tired, but tired how Rosa Parks was tired. I'm tired of talking about it in corners. I'm tired of it being private. I'm tired of the only time you hear it is when somebody crying out for help. No, we should be just as mad about what these kids and these families are experiencing as we get mad when a Black person is killed. Be mad these Black mamas going through what they're doing. Black lives don't only matter when they killing us. It matter in the racial disparities in our healthcare. It definitely matter when you tearing apart families for generations, So I'm beyond, you know what, Michael? As I'm transitioning into 2023, I'm beyond playing it safe to make them comfortable. You're not my enemy. No, you're not my enemy. But I'm not here to tiptoe around you, baby. Our gift and our destiny will make space for us. You're going to either make this space for me or baby, I'm going to keep doing it. I realized even to myself, like, I can't keep working to consult for other organizations who don't see my value totally. They think I'm only okay to be used right here. No. And I don't want to. One of my mentees told me, she said, Keita, because she called me Social Akita, because I do music and stuff, but we'll talk about that another time. But she said, Keita, I don't understand why you keep going to work for these organizations when you help us more than any of them has ever did. Just have your own organization so you can do what you need to do the right way. I'll come work for you. And it's a client who was 22. She was 16 when I met her. Got a degree, got a house, got a car. Like, I've had so many success stories. So we know what we're doing. But beyond that, if they don't want to create the space for us, we're going to create our own space. If they don't want to hear us, well, we're going to make our own platform like you did. I was inspired. That's what I'm talking about. Like, it's not time for that anymore. Like, if not us, then who, Michael? If we don't make them uncomfortable, who gonna make them uncomfortable?
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's crazy because you don't know that you're not the only one until you see someone and they say the same thing that people were saying to you. Like this whole and I because I want to go back to one other thing before we get ready to end out this episode, but this whole movement, initiative, um, whichever you want to call it, um, Resilient Voices Beyond, um, it's and I know some people feel some type of way about resiliency because how it's used, but I'm talking about the beyond. After you've been told you've been resilient all throughout your experience, the beyond you got to get to, you know.
Mm-hmm.
um and much like yourself, and I commend you for saying it, life ain't perfect now. Granted, we doing the consulting, we doing the advocacy and stuff like that, but if but I'm gonna say it anyways. We still have to continue to fight and argue for every cent, that
That
we're
we
able
can.
to get.
Mhm.
Like I started this podcast, and I started it because it was a calling given to me by God. Some people go understand that, some people aren't ready to hear that, but that's for you to understand that at some other time. But for me, um I've been doing a lot of work for other people, and I worked at McDonald's. I worked fast food, many other fast food. I've done landscaping. I've worked at corrections. I worked as a CNA. I've worked as a paramedic, a EMT. I've done a lot. I've worked in so many different fields. In my 25 years of life, and I just like got to a point. I believe it was December and November. I was just thinking and I was praying and I was like, I can't do this no more. Like, I have no more room on my resume for another job. Like, granted, like I know we supposed to finish our school. I know we're supposed to do other stuff. And I'm one of those individuals. Unfortunately, having being bounced around, I developed learning disabilities. So I can't just fly through school. I have time to make sure I'm retaining the information. So that looks like me taking 2 or 1 class a semester to make sure that I do my due diligence to pass. That's what college looks like for me right now. I'm
And
still in
that's
school,
okay.
but it's gonna be a minute for me to obtain my degree, but the experience that I have, I've worked with senators to directors with states to CEOs and what have you, and I'm constantly trying to prove myself. Now I started my own stuff, because I was like, I'm no longer about to keep working for other people who I keep bringing connections to, keep bringing resources to, and they don't value it. They use it and then tarnish it, and then want some more. And I'm not about that. Like, I'm about like, hey, if you're gonna come to me and trust that I'm gonna help you with a resource or help you get connected, excuse me, it's not gonna just stop after we get you to a place of thriving. You can come back to us, whenever you need us after that, or however you need us. It's about the network, it's about the connection. And I feel that, we just shut the door too many times. And I experienced that so many times working for other, nonprofits, organizations, and stuff like that. So I was like, God, where do you want me to be? And it wasn't completely vivid, but I was like, okay, looked into my notes. I had this podcast plan. I had a plan for a nonprofit. I had a plan for an LLC. And I was like, okay, I've been writing all this stuff up and just not pursuing it. And I heard for me, to start, just start. And I was like, then what came is like, I ain't got the money. Like, how am I supposed to do this? I don't know how to do a podcast. I'm used to doing speaking engagements with people, like I don't want to be doing this on a, so I was being disobedient and what have you. And then what happened is I finally was like, okay, I'm gonna just be obedient. I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna do it. I don't know what's gonna come out of it. And I started. Season 1 came out with 51 episodes, and I was like, okay, so people, this is something that actually needs to be here. Like, and I was explaining to people throughout season 1, like, look, I don't even know what I'm doing. I promise you, but I'm showing up, and God has given me the words to say. He's given me what needs to be talked about, and the questions to ask. And I kind of just been following that. And that's been my movement throughout all of this, but I can appreciate what you're saying coming around full circle about starting your own business, because that's where I'm at right now, because no one values my experience. I get, those moments where people are like, hey, we want you to consult and stuff like that, but no one values my experience more than I will, more than other people with lived experience, and I want to set the stage and set the standard for other people. Building this podcast, I'm on the other end of understanding what God's mission was. I'm hoping to build this podcast up even more, and have a community aspect to it, but also a virtual aspect of talking in a place of healing and education and outreach. But I'm hoping that I can somehow, some way, build this up to become sustainable on its own and have other people be hosts, other people be producing these episodes that are lived experience people who want to learn about this field, and I can provide funding, resources for them to be able to do this, because I was like, okay, we got all these other places that are saying they want to pay us, they want to do this and that and stuff. I'm not talking about seasonal work. I'm talking about livable wages for people to pursue their dreams of advocacy. If they want to be an advocate, they should be able to say, hey, I'm an advocate and I get paid, a salary. That's what I want to be able to do for my foster brothers and sisters. And right. I don't know how this world is going to navigate for me to be able to do it, but I just know that is my mission, because I'm tired, much like you, of, well, we ain't got the funds. Child welfare is a $90 billion industry.
Don't get me started now, Michael. They gonna put us on the air, Michael.
Those funds go. Because when you look at some of the facilities these kids go to, we look at the food they're getting, we look at the medical care that they're getting. Nah, but that's a conversation for another day. One of the other things I wanted to touch on before we get down, is that you talked about when we're talking about being a young mom, you talked about the seeking of love, and that's not just a girl or a woman thing. It happens across the board for us as foster youth. And I wanted to lift this up a little bit more, for those individuals, that may be still struggling with this, that to help them understand, like, relationships is going to be hard. That's real. If you've been through the system, relationships can probably be your biggest demise. You probably can ace everything, but your relationships will probably be one of your biggest demise, and I'm just speaking from my experience, that may not be your situation, but from my experience, I've seen that being the struggle for most people. And, just yet again, there's no guide to how to be a friend. There's no guide to how to be a wife or a husband or a girlfriend or a boyfriend, especially if no one has talked to you about these things. If you have not had any representation of what a healthy relationship looks like in any fashion, how are you supposed to be a healthy, secure individual in relationship with anyone? So I just wanted to uplift that, and tell people, don't beat yourself up so much. Give yourself room to make mistakes. Give yourself room to fall short. But also, hold yourself to a standard. Hold yourself to the value within yourself, the worth within yourself, because you don't deserve to be abused, to be in a toxic relationship. You don't deserve to be used, and if in a bill, you don't deserve to settle either, So take that time to figure out what you want, what you need and what you deserve, and and this is one of the things I wish I would have done, you know, find positive and healthy representations that you can look to, and the thing is, so many people are like, well, I need to find a mentor, I need to do this. No, like, you ain't always got to do that. Like, it can be somebody you can observe from afar. Like, you can pick somebody that, like, okay, they go to the same church. Like, I ain't looking to, build a whole relationship or mentorship with them, but I can observe and see, them from afar. If you can find a mentorship, that's great. But don't let that be the stumbling block. Like, hey, I don't know. I can find a mentor. I don't know if I can find somebody that can help me and guide me or what have you, because you can learn just as much by observing someone and watching how they walk, watching how they present themselves, and taking note, just as well as having that intimate mentor relationship. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
I do. And I want to add that it doesn't always take a mentor. Sometimes it's just inspiration, like you were saying. Look at them and you can admire the qualities. I'm a product of women who I admire, and I may have never even met them. I admire the way Michelle Obama is graceful when she enters the room. I admire the way Rosa Parks stood up for what she believed in. I admire so many things. And even if the representation is not coming from the family we need, it's okay to honor other people's experiences. It doesn't mean you trying to bite their style or, what we say in our culture, but honor that and build upon it, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Definitely. Now, before we, leave, a couple of questions for you, but I know you have your own business, you're doing so many great things. I know you've briefly touched on little things and stuff like that, but I want to give you the space to give us a detailed, explanation of what you're doing, what your business is about, how people can, connect or follow to that, and most importantly, how people can support or donate to your work.
Well, I'm pretty new in my business. I'm going to be quite honest with you guys. I incorporated 2 months ago. And the whole concept of a guided heart is to create, like you were saying, foster youth to form a foster youth with lived experience to opportunities that are meant for them. I also am developing a transitional program that's going to be fully administered by those with lived experience. I don't want to give out too many trade secrets, but I'm looking to build a network such as Michael and everybody else out here who's already doing the work, so that we're not operating in silos. I'm trying to build a network of guided hearts who really can come together to make the impact we're looking to make. And actually pay us a livable wage, Aside from that, I do have my clothing brand, Sultry. I have on a top now, so I have a clothing brand. And I am also an artist. I'm a little crazy about my music because my social anxiety, of course, but my music name is Social Geek. If you guys want to connect with me, I don't care if you never even heard of me. Listen here. If you a system brother or sister, we are together, baby. Follow me on social media at Social Geek. That's SOCIALGEEKK. Now, I'm not always this poised on Instagram, but if you guys looking for genuine connection, let's do it. And as for support, if you really desire lived experience integration into any aspect of the work you're doing with child welfare, connect with me. And not beyond, and I'm talking beyond just a little how you feel. Like, if you want to integrate us in the CQR process, are you looking to do some capacity building, anything of that nature, even if you're someone who aged out of foster care and you may need assistance with developing some aspects of your organization, I'm open. It's not all about getting paid. Like, I really, my desire, like, we have iFoster, we have things like that, but like how you guys got the JIT network, to create a network of lived experience individuals where we can uplift everyone's expertise, So that vision you got, Michael, I'm gonna connect with you. I think we're gonna do a lot of more work together, but you guys can connect with me at LinkedIn. My name is Frankita Jenkins, or you can follow me on social media. My email is jfrankita@gmail.com if you would like to discuss any potential opportunities. I'm not good at networking yet, you guys, so bear with me.
No, that was perfect. I appreciate you sharing that. truly a privilege. Truly a privilege. If you guys understand, like, I know some people listen aren't religious, but I can't help but, when I have these conversations and I know that they're impacting individuals out there, it's wild to me, because to see how we connected, like I just recently got on Jet, like somebody referred me to that, and then connecting with you. And now we're here, speaking, having this conversation. For me, that ain't nothing but God.
Right.
Like,
Right.
to be like, I got something from this conversation, and I know somebody out there will get something from this, and I just, I just hope that, as you guys are seeing how things are moving for me, especially the youth that may be listening to or following or watching, me and some of the other people on here, as you guys are seeing this, it can happen to you as well, so be persistent, be courageous and pursue what you want to pursue. Do not settle. I like I said, like I'm far from being in a perfect world, in a perfect place in my life. I still have a lot more work to do for to stabilize my own foundation. Right now I got a couple beams up, but right now I'm still laying concrete down in some spaces. I'm still, making sure the structure is sound. So I'm still working on that. I'm only 25. I'll be 26 next year, but I know that having stability is a goal of mine. And as long as that goal is there in your mind, you can reach it. As long as you're focused towards it, so be persistent, be courageous, be brave, and, don't settle, chase after your dreams and don't be afraid about it. So, I know we touched on a lot, but I have one last thing for you. What advice would you like to leave here today?
That no matter what you did or where you come from, you can always choose to be somebody different. No matter what your story is, no matter what they told you, no matter how they said you wouldn't, you couldn't, you wasn't going to, you can. And if nobody ever told you, if you ain't here today, I believe in you. Shape the table. Stop playing it safe and shape that table.
I couldn't have said it any better. Truly appreciate you being on here today. To the audience, if anything in this episode has triggered you or have uplifted some things from your past, take some time before you do anything else to center yourself. Do some self-care, do some mindfulness exercises. You heard it, from myself and from my guests here today. We're available to be reached out to if you want to have that conversation. We've lived through it, we've walked through it, we're living through it currently, so we're willing to have those conversations to help you if this is fresh for you, so feel free to reach out to us, and we'd love to help connect you to resources, or to, be there for you. Also, cold and flu season is here. Take care of yourself. Put your mask back on. Get that hand sanitizer. Wash your hands, please. Like, and I can't say this because I was working with some younger people, and they were like, what is the proper thing to do? With hand sanitizer, stuff like that. And technically, you're supposed to use hand sanitizer not as frequently. You're supposed to use it like 1 or 2 times, but also then go wash your hands. Like, hand sanitizer does not supplement from you washing your hands. Like, and a lot of these hand sanitizers, even though they say they're 99% this, that isn't always true. So please make sure that you're taking care of yourself. You're wearing your mask and you're being cautious out there, and taking care of yourself, because we're all a part of this big village, and it takes one of us to do the right thing, and everybody else follows in suit, getting ready to end season 2, and I'm gonna take a little break. Some of you guys like, what that break look like, or some of you guys, I have to be mindful how I say things because I'm not ending the podcast. I just like release a lot within 1 year. So I want people to catch up. I want people to hear the conversation. I want people to listen to the messages that I'm talking about and my guests are talking about and that we're putting out there. This is not just some show. This is not just some thing that I'm doing. I want people to truly hear these conversations and take things from these and continue the conversation in their own homes, in their own offices, and what have you. Because that's how this works, that's how we begin to educate and begin to have that outreach and begin to network and become more of a community, you know. So that, for me, I'm hoping to get in more into some outreach, getting out into the community, getting in person with some things, throughout this time that I'm going to be taking a little break from recording. I got a couple of projects that I'm probably going to be pursuing, in that time. But more importantly, I will be back for season 3. And season 3, I already know it's gonna be a banger. So I'm excited for what God has for me coming forward. And what He has for you guys. So, with all that being said, this has been Resilient Voices, episode 29. Long time coming.
Long time.
Long time coming. Episode 29 of season 2. I hope you guys have a good morning, good night, whenever you're listening to this. Thank you guys for listening. Talk to you guys soon.